Kevin O'Leary said that Binance deliberately caused the FTX collapse. Very strong words from Kevin. In today's show, we're going to be going over three things. Firstly, is there any truth to what Kevin is saying here? Did Binance have a hand to play in FTX's collapse? We're going to go through that full story. Then we are going to go through Sam's arrest and have a look at some of the other members of FTX who have not yet been arrested but are in the firing line from the SEC and are in the firing line to potentially be next to be arrested. So we're going to look through all of those members, Gary Wang, Caroline Ellison, Dan Friedberg, all those guys, and look at what they are currently doing and if they are next in the firing line to be arrested. And then as the third segment of this show, we are going to look through the CPI. The FOMC was obviously earlier today. We had some pretty strong words from Jerome Powell, which did affect the market. So I want to talk through exactly where I think this market is headed off the back of that. But let's start with the juicy stuff. Let's start with Kevin O'Leary. And let's start with the SBF conversation. Did Binance actually cause FTX's downfall, or is just Kevin just talking out of his ass to try and protect himself after taking a $15 million endorsement from FTX? So just to get you guys up to speed, I know a lot of you have been watching the shows over the last few days, but essentially Sam was officially arrested by the Royal Bahamas Police Force off the back of the US's request after they did file criminal charges against SBF. The charges that the US filed against SBF were pretty deep. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud on customers, conspiracy to commit wire fraud on lenders, commodities, and securities for fraud. Charges that could potentially land him in jail for between 85 and 115 years. It could carry an extremely harsh sentence as they could look to make an example out of Sam Bankman-Fried. Right now, what is happening is he got denied bail. So he went to the courthouse in the magistrate's court in the Bahamas. He was denied bail. They were going for $250,000. His defense was that he was mentally unstable, suffered from ADD, depression, insomnia. The judge said, I'm sorry, can't grant you bail. You are a flight risk. You're going to be staying in the Bahamas until the 8th of February, where after that, he likely faces extradition to the US. It is expected that Sam does end up in the US once proceedings take place after February 8th. So that is the current update on the situation here. What I want to talk about now is if CZ actually put SBF in jail, because Kevin O'Leary had some very strong words this morning, and Sam has also echoed a similar sentiment. So I want to look through exactly what happened with the relations between Binance and SBF as well. Before we get into that, if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm here every single day at 7:30 p.m. EST to give you the latest updates on the crypto market. Obviously, when news like this breaks, I'll cover it, and when I have alpha to share based on new projects I'm looking at, new coins that I think have performed well, I'll share my fundamental analysis there as well. So make sure you're subscribed, and so you don't miss a single show, turn on post notifications if you just have a spare second, because we're always going to be at the front line of delivering you the latest alpha and news. Let's go through exactly what happened. So basically on November 7th, when this FTX saga started to heat up, CZ put out an initial thread. He said, as part of Binance's exit from FTX liquidity last year, Binance received $2.1 billion in BUSD and FTT. Due to recent revelations that have come to light, they've decided to liquidate any remaining FTT on our books. If you guys remember, this was the tweet that initially sent FTX spiraling because Binance announced that they were selling. They were a large investor in FTX, a large holder of the FTT tokens. Obviously, Binance dumping their tokens results in huge sell pressure on FTX itself. He said, we will try and do so in a way that minimizes market impact due to market conditions and limited liquidity. This will take a few months to complete. He said they always encourage collaboration between industry players regarding any speculation as to whether this move is against a competitor. It is not. Afterwards, they announced that they were taking over FTX. That ended up failing their due diligence process, and they were reneged out of the deal. So when they ended up reneging out of the FTX deal initially, CZ said, I was out with friends yesterday when the topic of whale alerts came up. Following our principles, I decided to be transparent. So I wrote a thread in 5 mins and I posted it. Little did I know it was going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. So CZ here actually admitting that this tweet was potentially the straw that did break the camel's back for FTX, irrespective of what was going down behind the scenes. He did kind of hint at this. So he wanted to kind of take back some of the things he said, or at least soften the blow, because he was receiving a lot of backlash. A lot of people were praising him, but a lot of people were also giving him backlash. He said, everyone wants more transparency transparency in our industry, right? My tweets were simple. There were questions about an FTT deposit to Binance, and we were transparent about the fact we were closing our position. The fact it sparked such levels of discussions was surprising. There were also conspiracy theories that he orchestrated the whole thing. If you read this, you will appreciate no one could orchestrate this. He actually quote tweeted my thread that I did on what went wrong for SBF and FTX and kind of ran you guys through the initial situation. But we fast forward into the future after the deal fell through, after FTX collapsed, and this is just a few days ago, we can kind of see some tensions boiling over between CZ and between SBF. So what CZ said was, Sam was so unhinged when we decided to pull out as an investor. So when they decided to sell their FTX, when they decided to pull out of the deal to acquire FTX, he launched a series of offensive tirades at multiple Binance team members, including threatening to go to extraordinary lengths to make us pay. This is a quote from the text messages between those two that CZ got a hold of. SBF said, "You won, CZ. There's no need to lie now about the buyout. We initiated conversations about buying you out, and we decided to do it because it was important for our business. And while I was frustrated with your negotiation tactics, I chose to still do it." This is the kicker. You threatened to walk at the last minute if we didn't give an extra $75 million. We did it anyway because this made us feel more confident. We didn't want Binance on our cap table. But again, none of this is necessary. You won. Why are you lying about this now? Among other things, as you know, you didn't even have the rights to pull out as an investor unless we chose to buy you out. Much of the tokens were still locked. So they were just going back and forth. CZ said, "Sam, not that it matters now. You also can't force us to sell if we don't want to. We have the right to block any further fundraising you were doing. Never used or mentioned it. It was never a competition or fight. No one won." So they were going back and forth. And then just 2 days ago, the testimony from when SBF was supposed to appear in front of US Congress was leaked. Obviously, he was arrested. Funnily, timing actually. He was arrested the day before he was supposed to appear in front of US Congress. But instead, we did get the leaked testimony, which he had prepared to share with US Congress. And we see, and it's very low quality, but I'll read it out so you can see it. We can see screenshots of text messages from an exchange coordination group chat between SBF and CZ. SBF says, "So to be absolutely explicit, CZ, are you claiming that you think 250K of USDT trading would depeg it?" CZ says, "No, I don't think that size will succeed, etc. More work for market makers." And then he says, "So you said stop trying to depeg stablecoins. Are you claiming that I was attempting to depeg USDT by doing a 250K trade?" CZ says, "My honest advice," this is very harsh, by the way, "my honest advice, stop doing everything. Put on a suit, go back to DC, and start to answer questions." Maybe that advice would have actually been the right thing to follow from SBF instead of going on this crazy Spaces interview charade that he ended up going on. He said, "Thanks for the advice. I do kind of want to clarify, though. Did you attempt to accuse me of trying to depeg a stablecoin doing a 250K trade?" And then CZ said, "Anyone object to remove SBF? I think we should coordinate a bit to see how we best work together to stabilize and restore confidence for the market." So essentially, you wanted to boot him out of the group chat. But what SBF said is that he categorically denies any accusations that he wanted to depeg USDT. He denies any allegations that he tried to take down Three Arrows Capital earlier in the year. He said these claims are categorically false. So there's a lot of tensions boiling over between SBF and CZ. But the last thing that I expected, and actually maybe I should have expected it now because of recent behavior, but the last thing I expected today was Kevin O'Leary to come out and echo the exact same sentiment of SBF, that Binance was directly responsible for taking down FTX. Now, I have the vision here. I want to play it from the hearing in front of the Senate earlier today, where Kevin makes some pretty harsh statements. Let's play that clip.
Why do you believe FTX failed?
Internet.
I have an opinion. I don't have the records. Here it is. These two behemoths that own the unregulated market together and grew these incredible businesses in terms of growth were at war with each other. And one put the other out of business intentionally. Now, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe there's nothing wrong with love.
I already know the quote off
11
by heart,
more.
even though it's not playing.
But Binance is a massive, unregulated global monopoly now.
Powell, just
They put
replay that one
FT
sentence that he said about them intentionally putting them out of business. It's around halfway through.
Other. And one put the other out of business intentionally. Now,
Yeah, that's
maybe there's
absolutely
nothing
crazy
wrong
in
with
my
that. Maybe
opinion.
there's
So
nothing wrong with
what
love and
Kevin
war.
O'Leary is saying is
But-
that what Kevin is saying is that Binance intentionally put FTX out of business. So we know Kevin was a spokesperson for FTX. We know that he was paid a certain amount of money, which I'll reveal in a second, to actually support FTX. And he has been, funnily enough, an advocate for FTX, even despite everything that's gone down. He said things like on Rand's show that if he had the opportunity to invest in Sam again, he would. He said things like how smart Sam is. He's tried to defend Sam's actions many times, and he's really holding a hard line. Kevin isn't one to give up easily, clearly, but I think he might be taking the wrong approach here. And in order to defend his own character, he's clearly going to extreme lengths to poke shots at competitors like Binance instead of accepting responsibility for the fact that his actions were potentially wrong. And as D-Worm's saying here, I think O'Leary has ruined a lot of his credibility. In fact, most of his credibility over the past few weeks and months. So if you guys don't know, before this whole saga went down, he said, if there's ever a place I could be that I'm not going to get in trouble, it's going to be at FTX. So he said that's a place where he feels safe to park his assets and isn't worried about anything happening. And FTX ended up being the one going down. He lost credibility there. But I think at this point, he could have stopped and he could have said, look, I was wrong. I made a misjudgment call. I was deceived by Sam. I'm going to be doing everything in my power to make things right by customers. That would have been the right approach to take, in my opinion. Instead, he's kind of gone on a media campaign of bashing competitors now like Binance, a campaign of defending SBF's actions, a campaign of trying to make himself look credible in the midst of this situation, but all it's done is the exact opposite, and it's ended up backfiring, in my opinion. So we have another video, if we can get it up, of SBF saying that he would invest in FTX again if I was guaranteed nothing would happen. And there's also a video of him announcing that he was an official paid ambassador for FTX. Can we get that video up? This is where he reveals the amount that he was paid.
Technologies is astronomical in scale. In August of 2021, nearly 3 years after I started allocating capital to the crypto sector, I entered into an agreement with FTX to be a paid spokesperson. I was paid approximately $15 million for these services, plus approximately $3 million to cover the portion of the taxes due. Of the remaining amounts, approximately $1 million was invested in FTX equity and approximately $10 million in tokens held in FTX wallets. The equity is now most likely worthless, and the accounts have been stripped of their.
So I think we heard enough there. So essentially, what he says is he was paid $15 million from FTX. $10 million was locked in FTX accounts of now, which are essentially worthless. And he was a paid endorser of FTX, but also an investor in FTX and had equity behind the company as well. So, I mean, whether it's a very deep rabbit hole that we could go down to determine how true the claims are that Binance put FTX out of business. Of course, there is some facts that do line up. CZ's original tweet did result in the FTX collapse starting to happen, I suppose, or at least a lot of the FUD starting to happen. I guess you could make the argument that maybe CZ, and I'm not making any allegations here, but potentially CZ wouldn't mind seeing a competitor go down because, I mean, that means more of a market share in the US market. You could potentially take that mindset. But I think at the end of the day, irrespective of those theories, FTX was responsible for its own downfall. Kevin needs to take responsibility for the fact that he was endorsed by, paid $15 million to promote FTX, and obviously had equity in FTX itself. He needs to take responsibility for that. Sam needs to take responsibility for that. And taking cheap shots at CZ and Binance, in my opinion, is not the way to go. It's not the way to make things better. It's not the way to make investors whole. And it's not the way to move forward as an industry. So seeing stuff like this from Kevin O'Leary, it kind of just makes me shake my head in shame. So let's move on to the second topic of today's show, which is who's next to be arrested. This is actually a very juicy segment. I was going to do it as its own video, but I decided why not just give the juice to you guys today. So Sam Bankman-Fried, he was officially arrested, but Sam may or may not have even been the main driving force behind this whole FTX saga. A lot of people have been very quick to point the finger at Sam, and obviously he has vast responsibility in what went down. However, there are key members of the inner circle here that were pulling the strings behind the scenes, that were potentially responsible for creating backdoors, making dodgy investment decisions. Obviously, Sam oversaw those people, but there's many people that are yet to be arrested. We don't even know where they are and are clearly in the firing line from the SEC to face some sort of punishment. Now, I want to look through 3 of these people. Yeah, someone said 15 plus 3 plus 1 plus minus 10 equals 7 mil. Where's that 7 million, Kevin? I mean, we don't know exactly if his money was locked in accounts or how much he got to take out. I'm presuming he was net profitable, of course, from the whole thing. But the damage now it's done to his credibility is worth much more than $7 million, even if he took that out. So I wanted to look through some of the key members of FTX and what their involvement may have been, because the Southern District of New York said that they are not done charging individuals. And Sam was just the beginning of their of the arrests here. So there are going to be, look at what Kobe said, if you only knew how bad things are, put a picture of Caroline underneath it. So let's go through some of the other main members. Now, there was a group called Wire Fraud. This was a secret group that was used to send secret information about operations that led to the FTX collapse, per the Australian Financial Review. This secret group had a few key members of FTX in it, and I think when the details from this group come to the light of the public, because eventually they will come to light, the US will be conducting a very long investigation into FTX, which includes forensics, which includes de-encrypting some of the encrypted chats like wire fraud. They're going to see many members that could, of this group that have potentially implicated themselves through the actions that they've taken and the things that they have said in these group chats. Now, Gary Wang is one of the people in here. Nishad Singh is another one. Caroline Ellison's another one. So let's have a look through a few of these people. Gary Wang was actually the co-founder of FTX and Alameda. Not many people are talking about Gary. Not many people are talking about Dan. Everyone's talking about SBF, but these guys could equally, if not be more at fault than SBF. Of course, that's a big statement to make, but I'm just saying that it literally could be a scenario, and we will get more news about these guys' actual involvement in FTX as time goes on. We can see that Gary Wang, the co-founder of FTX, had at least $224 million that he borrowed from the company, probably in Hong Kong or China or some city you would never heard of. So they were actively pulling money out of the FTX business. Obviously, these were customer funds that they were pulling out of the business, and Gary Wang was one of the people responsible for this. He was also responsible for creating a backdoor which allowed FTX to secretly move funds illegally to Alameda and other entities. This is not official. This is from an FTX insider that was on the Spaces a few weeks ago. But these are the rumors, and I've heard these rumors from multiple people, that there was a backdoor created in FTX, and that backdoor was instructed to be created by FTX to Gary Wang. Obviously, SBF is the one who instructed it. Gary Wang could have been the one who helped create this backdoor. SBF and Gary Wang controlled all of FTX's digital assets personally, using a group email account to share private keys, software to conceal the misuse of customer funds, and the big one, the secret exemption of Alameda from certain aspects of FTX. So when we look at who's responsible for this situation, I think it's undeniable, with Mr. Wang having such control over the funds of FTX and over where money was diverted, it can only be assumed that the SEC and the US Southern District Attorney, they are going to look heavily into Gary Wang next. He's definitely in the firing line. He's obviously hiding right now, but he is certainly one that would be extremely worried, and he is definitely one that could be arrested in the future as the FTX saga starts to unfold and we get more information. Now, another interesting thing is, before we get into these next few people, could SBF potentially reduce his sentence by implicating others? Now, this is a very interesting conversation, because let's say he's facing 85 years in jail. He could provide evidence to implicate Nishad Singh, Dan Friedberg, Gary Wang, Caroline Ellison potentially. I'm just stating names here that were involved with FTX. He could potentially provide information that could lead to their arrests or lead to their prosecution and reduce his own sentence. So there might be a fair bit of chucking others under the bus in this situation. Now, Nishad Singh, he is another member of the inner circle of 30-year-old co-founder of FTX. He was one that was involved with the financial practices of FTX. He joined Alameda Research in December 2017. At Alameda Research, he was the director of engineering for 17 months, and he was in the inner circle. Gary, Nishad, and Sam control the code, the exchange matching engine, and fund. So apparently these three were the ones responsible for all those things. Nishad was a prolific Democratic Party donor, as we know, so was FTX. He donated more than $13 million to the Democrats as well. And alongside alongside Gary Wang, Nishad Singh also allegedly got away with $554 million. Probably in India, shaved his head as a new ID and is staying under the radar. No one has spotted these guys yet, but they are definitely also in the firing line. Sam Trabucco, he's stepped down from FTX US. He's also one that's in the firing line to potentially be arrested because although he stepped down, probably avoided a lot of pain that he could have been in line to receive if he had stayed, he still purchased millions of dollars worth of property and assets pre-FTX collapse using funds from Alameda Research. So Trabucco announced his retirement just months before the collapse. Likely he knew what was going on behind the scenes. It's very, very likely that he was involved with what was going on behind the scenes, and that's why he stepped down. He appears to have vanished entirely from social media, yet went on a massive all-cash property shopping spree in the run-up to the complete ruin of the financial company. So literally just before FTX collapses, Sam Trabucco is buying properties. He bought a property for $8.7 million, all cash, no loans, spent another $10 million in all cash. He bought a 52-foot yacht, presumably using customer funds, buying yachts. And we can actually see him. I think this picture was actually taken after the FTX collapse. I can't confirm the date, but that's what I've been told. We can actually see him here on the right on his yacht, just chilling on his yacht in the Bahamas, like nothing has even happened. Now, it may have been taken before, but I've heard it was taken after. It'd be very funny. Well, not funny. It'd be stupid, but just, I don't know. It'd be a crazy event if it was, and he's just chilling on his yacht and having fun. BitBoy and a few of the other major spokespeople that have been kind of going after FTX over the last month or so highlighted that Dan Friedberg could be one of the string pullers behind this entire situation. Very interesting because before he joined FTX, he ran an online poker gambling website that was one of the biggest scandals in history, where they built backdoors into the software and viewing cards and used it to bet against them. Exactly what FTX were doing as traders. So a lot of speculation because Dan Friedberg being basically having evidence of running this kind of operation before, could he be running an operation again? Dan was a significant stakeholder and a much bigger player in the FTX collapse, and not only chief compliance officer. So there was a lot. He was chief compliance officer at FTX, obviously. Now, we talked before about SBF snitching. We talked before about him potentially reducing his sentence by implicating some of these three people. But Caroline Ellison may have already done that towards SBF. She may have been the snitch that broke the camel's back. And there are some theories, two compelling reasons why this could be the case. If you don't know who Caroline was, she was the CEO of Alameda Research. She was in a love affair, supposedly, with Sam Bankman-Fried. A lot has been said about her in the media and her involvement in FTX, but there are a few very interesting things. Firstly, the SEC just awarded $20 million to a whistleblower. $20 million to a whistleblower who led to the arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried. Caroline Ellison was spotted in New York at Manhattan at 8:15 a.m. on December 5th. This is just a week and a half before this SEC award, right? Why would she be in America? Why would she dare to step foot in New York if she wasn't making a deal with the Southern District Attorney? Why wouldn't she be in Dubai or Argentina or Ecuador or another safe haven? I don't know. Why was she in New York and not in Hong Kong? And why wasn't she in custody given that she was in New York? Very interestingly, Kobe actually did a tweet and he showed that the cafe she went to, the ground support cafe that she was spotted in, was only 21 minutes, 1 mile away, so a close walk to the U.S. Attorney's office. So is this just a coincidence that she happened to be in New York and she happened to be going to a cafe next to the US Attorney's Office? Or was she providing information that led to the arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried? Now, there's no way to prove this, but I think there is some interesting evidence that lines up that potentially she was either going to plead guilty or provide information or snitch on Sam in reward for clearing her own name. There are many scenarios, but I do think she has made a deal with the US attorney. Wall Street Silver also said this. It looks like a high possibility. Why else would she be across the street from their office? Now, she's hired some vigorous defense in the meantime. She hired a former SEC crypto regulator as a lawyer for the probe. The former crypto regulator and exchange commission to represent her in an ongoing federal probe. She's built a very strong legal team behind her, and this is obviously to try and defend her name. Potentially, they have advised her to come up with a deal with the U.S. attorney. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the people in question. Who's next to be arrested? Sam will not be the first. He's the first of many, presumably. All these guys that we talked about today are in the firing line. Caroline obviously is in the firing line, but we don't know what kind of deal she's brokered behind the scenes to maybe get out of some trouble here. So that is the second segment of today's show. Very juicy stuff. We're going to have to keep digging over the next couple of weeks as we get more information on this. Now, the third segment of today's show is FOMC and CPI talk, because Jerome Powell and the CPI yesterday were probably the two most anticipated dates in weeks for crypto. Obviously, we had the FTX situation, but when we look from a macro perspective at the future direction of the next few months in the crypto market and the stock market, this FOMC was very, very important because there's no rate hikes until February now. So there is a break in the schedule for another 48 days. So this speech from Jerome Powell in many ways dictates the next 48 days of price action for crypto and for the stock market. So I just want to kind of break down what happened, what Powell said, the tone he took, and how the market reacted, and look at some trades as well that I'm taking off the back of this meeting, because we do have a bit of clarity now over the macro situation. So the CPI data, which is the inflation data, actually came in below expectations. The forecasted CPI data year on year was 7.3%. The actual CPI data that we got was 7.1%. So this is trending downwards. This is in line with also a decline on expectation in November. So year on year, we're going down and down again. Month on month, we went up by 0.1, but that was also below expectations of 0.3. So CPI came in below expectations, and off the back of CPI, the Bitcoin price started to rally. It broke out of its trend, broke through this key level that we've been talking about for a week on my show, this 17.3 level, broke through and almost came up to test range lows. But although the CPI was a positive outcome for the markets, all eyes were on FOMC, because what Jerome Powell says, the language he uses, is he hawkish, is he dovish, that goes a long way to dictating how the market prices in the future percentage likelihood of a decrease or an increase in rate hikes, right? Because we're all looking forward at the dot plot and looking at how severe the Fed continues to hike rates into 2023. As you guys know, the more severe they are on the rate hikes, so the more they hike rates, the worse that is for markets. Yes, that brings inflation down faster, but you also run the risk of causing a recession. The lower the interest rates, the better it is for risk assets and equities. Obviously, Bitcoin being a risk asset, because you are lowering the overall cash rate, which is effectively a form of monetary easing policy, which helps markets perform. So what Jerome Powell actually said in the speech was nothing too out of the ordinary, but there were a few lines of note, and I'll show you those lines now. He said, we still have work to do. Okay, he said this line in basically every speech. Nothing much to take from there. Next, he said they need substantially more evidence of lower inflation before they make a call, before we start celebrating. So I would also agree with him, because we look at the CPI here, and yay, it's coming down. Woohoo, we went from 9.1 to 7.1%. Guys, 7.1% is fucking high historically. Doesn't really matter if it's coming down. That's nowhere near low enough. And if you kind of have inflation hovering around 7% for a long period of time, that's a big issue. That's a really, really big issue that continues to put pressure on equities, because the Fed's hands are tied. You can't really lower rates too much when your overall inflation is 7.1%. That's the negative side. The positive side is that it's trending downwards. And if it continues to trend downwards with minimal hiking, that would be positive, because maybe we get to a scenario where things start to level out at a lower base level. So he said they need more evidence, and I would agree with that. Powell also said, I wouldn't see us, and this was probably the most important line from the entire speech, I wouldn't see us considering rate cuts until the committee is confident that inflation is moving down to 2% in a sustained way. Moving down to 2%. We're at 7%. That is a long way to go. It's a long way from 7 to 2. It would take a lot more, it would take a lot more hikes, or at least sustained higher interest rates than previously expected to get us down to 2%. This was the line that started to worry markets, because the market was pumping when he first started speaking, because it was all generic stuff that we expected, and we absolutely pumped. We almost hit our range low. If you guys don't know what the range low is, it's the level that Bitcoin hit and consolidated at after the lunar collapse in May. That was the level that ended up consolidating as our range low. That led to the pre-merge pump. Then, obviously, we broke down into this FTX-related kind of new range here. But we went up to test this previous range, but we got rejected because Powell started to slip in some hawkish lines. He said our policy is getting close to sufficiently restrictive, which is a positive thing. But then he chucks in lines like they won't consider rate cuts until it's down to 2% in a sustained way. So he's towing the line still. This is an approach we've seen from Jerome Powell for many, many months. He toes the line between hawkishness and dovishness. He puts in enough dovish lines so the market doesn't freak out and the market doesn't dump. And then he puts in enough hawkish lines so the market doesn't completely pump and go crazy and inflation goes out of control again. So he kind of toes the line, and he's got this strategy where he'll slip in positive lines like this and then more hawkish lines like this. And that is why Bitcoin's price action is so crazy right now. But I think we can ignore a lot of Powell's words now, because everything he says we kind of have expected for the last month or so. Like, nothing he said was too out of the ordinary. I think we can trade right now, given the fact we've got 48 days of breathing room before the next hike, based on the trend. The trend we're seeing is that inflation's coming down. The trend we're seeing is that the Fed is going to have to slow the hikes, irrespective of what they want. They're going to have to. And that is why I'm more interested right now from a TA perspective to look at potential long positions in the short term. So this is obviously a short-term trade over a multi-month time frame. A lot can happen. Trading crypto over a multi-month time frame right now doesn't really work in many cases. You kind of have to either take a very long approach or a shorter-term approach. That's just my opinion, at least right now, because many black swan events, more contagion from FTX, all that stuff can affect the market, right? So when I look at my short-term trading, so over the next week or so, what levels I'm interested at, I do think we are starting to show signs of nice support at this 17.6 region. The next clear support level is 17.3. But if we retest and bounce off this level, that is a very positive sign, in my opinion, that we're holding. Now, Ethereum, funnily enough, even though it's shown relative strength, it didn't actually pump as hard as Bitcoin yesterday. But if I were longing anything, I would long Ethereum, because typically ETH performs stronger than Bitcoin when we get these pumps. Now, we are approaching a level that I don't mind as a long zone, and that's the 1300 zone. We're still at 1306. I'm very picky with this level. If I can get in a buy at 1300, I don't mind this zone for a short-term trade, setting a stop slightly below so I don't lose much money. It's a scalp trade. If I lose a couple percent. It's all good. If I win, then I'm in a good position to take some profits, maybe closer to the 1350 to 1400 zone. So I trade on Apex because it's a decentralized exchange. I like trading on DEXs. It's an order book, so it's not an Oracle-style exchange. It's good because it's built on ZK Sync on a layer 2, so I do like it. So what I'm going to do is put it in order right now at 1300. That's the level I like. I'm going to, once the order has executed on Apex, we can set a stop loss. I'm going to be going in with 50% of this portfolio. It's a small portfolio, but if I open any bigger trades, it'll be on a centralized exchange as well. I kind of like to spread my risk out across multiple exchanges. The portfolio size here is not to show off my size. It's to give you guys an example of how to trade. So it doesn't really matter how much money you put in. It's the logic stays the same. The level stay the same, right? So I've got the 1300 level for a long position. The leverage is variable on Apex, so the leverage will depend on the amount of demand for that position at that given time, at that given amount, but you can set a stop loss after it goes through. And I would probably set my stop around, let's just zoom in a little bit, onto the 1 hourly. This is more of a scalp long, but I just don't mind it at this level, to be honest. We've already tested once. Bitcoin had a pretty strong retest, but Ethereum's slightly lagging behind, so I probably prefer ETH. I would set it below this wick here at 1290. So 1290, you're only going to lose like 5%. Depends on how much leverage you use. So yeah, that is the trade I'm looking at the moment. Just to give you guys some insight into my short-term trading. Obviously, opening those trades on Apex. There is a link in the description. It's the second link to trade on Apex if you want to trade. If you trade on Apex, you get weekly rewards. So they're giving away $190,000 of weekly trading rewards every single week. They're giving away tens of millions of dollars over the year to incentivize people to trade on the platform. They've just launched. They're partners with BYBIT. They're the official DEX partner of BYBIT. They're rewarding people for trading. So if you trade on Apex, you're going to get rewards back. You're going to earn Banner, which you can then stake, and that has some cool utility behind it as well to LP and earn more yield on your Banner. Or you could just sell it, of course, and use the money to trade whatever you want to do. But yeah, they're giving away pretty good prizes. One more thing I want to touch on before I head off is give you a nested portfolio update. If you guys don't know, I actively DCA into this market on Nested. I basically have been building portfolios that you guys can copy directly and copy my DCAs. So you'll notice if we look at my Polygon portfolio, we are quite heavy in USDC, right? So if you invest in my portfolio, you are going to have a heavy stablecoin allocation. But why is that the case? Because over the next 6 to 12 months, I'm going to be DCAing into the market, and I want to keep a very pragmatic approach to entering this market, right? I want to pick the narratives that can outperform. I want to take heavy profits back into stables when I think we're going to experience periods of volatility or downside pressure. And then I want to buy into the market when I think there's an opportune time to do so. So right now, this is how we're set up. We've hit some pretty nice gains across the board here. The overall portfolio is 3% up, which is actually beating Ethereum and Bitcoin by 5%. So if you want to join me on my DCAs on this journey over the next 6 months, I'm going to create 3 portfolios, one on Polygon, one on BNB, one on Arbitrum, all insured by Nexus Insurance. So that protects you against smart contract risk. Your funds are insured on Nested Finance, and you can DCA over time with me and join one of these portfolios. So there's a link in the description to check out my Nested profile. Once we get to 105 copiers, I'm going to be giving away $1,000 to 2 people that join. So you do have, I don't know, the slots are going to fill up quick, but if you do join and get involved with the copies, you're still eligible for that giveaway. And of course, you get to DCA along with me into the market. And I'm going to continue to build portfolios for you guys. For the ones asking me, why has there been no changes over the past couple of days? Well, it's simply because I don't think this is the time to be buying spot for a lot of assets. I actually bought PYR. I did a tweet. I said why I like that right now in terms of its spot accumulation zone. I also like Arweave in that zone. But there's limited projects I like in this zone. So I'm taking the slow approach. I'm DCAing it over time. And if you want to join me, you can do so as well. So now what I want to do is go into Instagram, Miles_Deutscher, link in the description to that as well. And I want to answer some questions because you guys know I like to do a little Q&A, hang out with the community, answer any questions you may have about either today's content or the market, just talk the market in general, talk altcoins, just have fun, hang out for a little bit. So I'm live on my Instagram right now. I just started the live. You can join me over there, link in the description, or you can obviously search up Miles_Deutscher. And yeah, we'll hang out for a little bit there and have a chat before tomorrow's show, which is going to be an absolutely massive one. I'm not going to reveal what it is yet. You're going to see. It's an interview with an absolute gigabrain Chad that is coming out tomorrow. I think you guys are going to love it. My most alpha pack show probably of the year. So watch out for that tomorrow. Until then, I'll see you on my Insta. Have a nice day, everyone. Peace out.